Well, I'm really happy to be here. There are a lot of really good people in this room, and when you stop and think about it, as I'm sure you have, there are really solid companies in this room and that drive this organization. You look down that roster of companies, and the thing that came to mind to me is these are companies that are serious. They're serious. They enjoy their work, are passionate about their work, but these are companies that are serious about being successful, making things better, making things sustainable. So I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor for me. And I owe you a big thank you for this invitation, because preparing for this presentation was a really, really healthy exercise for me to do. I think one of the rare commodities in today's world is actually time to stop and think. And especially in this economy that we've been fighting through for the last 3 or 4 years, I have not spent much time reflecting. And so when I was asked to share some thoughts about our process improvement journey, it was a really healthy exercise for me to do, and as silly as this sounds, but maybe you can appreciate, I actually learned a bit when I went through this, benefited from thinking about it, and have a bunch of stuff here that I'm going to keep and use and share with other people back at Hancock. There's just not a lot of stopping and reflecting, which reminded me also today, one of my favorite songs is The Gambler, Kenny Rogers. I actually have that song memorized. When my girls were little, I used to sing it out loud in the car so often. They had it memorized. They were like 5 and 6 years old. But I've also thought, if you look at the words, or the next time you play that song, it's a great business song. It's actually a really good life song. But on reflecting, remember this line. When I get better at this presentation, I'll sing this. But you never count your money when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done. And so stopping to reflect and actually count or think about the activity was actually quite healthy. The other thing that was a bit of a challenge or fun for me was actually to come up with the title. So in the cases where I do a presentation, my methodology is I do the presentation. I start with an idea, do the presentation, and the last thing I do is the title. And I have fun thinking about what 3 or 4 words would really be the core of what happened. And it was quite clear to me when I got done that the core of what happened was finding, as silly as it sounds, really truly finding at the manufacturing level the customer, and really connecting the customer and the manufacturing level together. So I'm going to take you quickly through a little bit of industry and company stuff, just because I think it's part of the story to connect, because every industry and business is a bit different. So for example, one thing about our business that's tricky is that we work with biology. So you think about that for a minute. So it's not like we're making plastic boards where we can make a mold and test the color, and every board can have exactly the same characteristics. We're working with white pine logs, and they take 80 years to grow, and you can't genetically engineer them, so they have a bunch of characteristics, some of which you like, some of which customers want, some of which you don't like, some of which customers don't want. And to take biology and turn it into a product the customer wants when they want it is tricky. So that's just kind of one example that you might not think about that makes manufacturing with a log and trying to tie that to a customer a bit interesting. I do want to quickly say too, I've invited a few people I really care about who are important parts of this story because they lived it and I wanted to share it with them. And I just want to say hi to Toby Hammond, who's here, and Joachim Wallstrom and Lisa Westberg and Greg Speed, they all were really important parts of the pieces of this that were good and healthy and successful. And finally, I want to say thank you to my friends at BIW. I've been blessed, and I don't really ever feel like I'm worth it or know how it happened. I'm like, only in Maine could a company like BIW be interested in the local lumber guy, like BIW has kind of adopted me. But I just have had so many opportunities to connect with that organization. Every time I go visit that organization, I'm like, oh my word, this is so cool when I look at what you all do. And I just want to say thanks to you all too. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look at this story. So in our business, there's an ancient sawmill proverb. And it's not that ancient. I remember this line being used like 10 years ago. And you know, with proverbs, the reason they stick is because it's kind of funny, but it's also like true. So in the sales offices in our industry 10, 15 years ago, and forever back, this was one of the lines. Sell them what they want, take an order for whatever they're asking for, ship them what you got when it's time to ship it. That was the dialed-in strategy with the customer. One of the other fun ways we've talked about that since, and this was actually really, there are times in which you'd probably be less impressed with us. This was actually an epiphany for us, that the warehouse is not the customer. So that was something we had to learn. So what I did, I hope you can see this, and I didn't bring enough, I'm sorry, but I brought a few photocopies of some of the key slides with some of the pages that might be harder to read, but I just made a list of some of the less desirable characteristics of our mill business in the year 2001. And I want to be quick to say, we were a really good mill company in 2001 or 1991, or it's just, this business was just done a bit differently. You know how that goes? So, but this is some things that would have described us. From the manufacturing floor, you really can't see the customer. You're really not very interested in the customer. The customer is the warehouse. In fact, we don't actually even deal with the customer. 50% of our sales go through paper trading brokers. We never even know who the customer is, the end user. We got lots of inventory. Our industry was, I don't want to take a lot of credit, but we did invent making things disappear. No one can lose inventory like the lumber industry did. This one actually makes me laugh at times. To a certain degree, production volume was set by manufacturing, not by customer demand, but just by how many hours we wanted to run. That's what drove volume. The key strategy to reduce cost was to make more, so that your unit costs went down. There was no, we worked all the time to get better, but by any standard that you would look at today, there was no formal process improvement system, or training, or methodology. Very little remanufacturing. It was kind of a one-pass business. Do some pattern product, but other than that, you ship what you make the first time, and people have to make it work. And sporadic profitability. Sometimes we do well, sometimes we wouldn't do so well, and you kind of move around. This is just a quick look at Hancock Lumber today. So as Jay said, my first career, I was a history teacher. So the way I put our company in historical perspective is before the first cannonball was fired in the Civil War, someone, Hancock or connected to Hancock and Casco, was making lumber. And we've been doing so uninterrupted ever since. And I'm proud to be a part of the 6th generation of my family to work for the company. And that's how I think about it. I try to share that a lot with people. Company doesn't work for me. Company did really well, if not better, before I showed up. And my job is to try to help leave it in better shape than it was in when I found it, me and the people I work with. And our company is a little bit unique today in how integrated it is. So we actually grow trees, We have 12,500 acres of timberland, which by northern Maine standards is really small. Like, they don't even pay attention to holdings that small. But what makes it a bit unique is it's almost all in Cumberland County. We're actually the last lumber company growing trees in southern Maine. It's not something that happens anymore. And then our sawmill division, manufacturing, which is what I'm going to focus on today, we have 3 facilities, Casco, Bethel, and Pittsfield. There are about 200 people that work in that team, and our distribution is primarily North America, but definitely global. And then a lot of people in Maine recognize us through our retail business, where we have 10 lumber yards, 10 businesses under a couple different brands, from Hancock Lumber to Home Again to our mill outlet stores. Just a quick look, because biology is important, and being lucky is important. White pine only grows in a very few places, and people who work with wood love white pine. And we just happen to be where it grows. And we've been smart enough to stick with it and take advantage of it. But because you can buy a board with, that's made out of Western pine, Southern pine, European product, South American product. Eastern white is one of many, many choices in what a board can be made out of. But people who use boards and use wood really like the characteristics of white pine, and they pay a premium to get it. And we do grow our own trees. These pictures are from what's known as the Jugtown Forest. I think that name came from the Prohibition days, out behind our office in Casco. All this land is open to the public. A big part of this land is under conservation easement. And trees are such a cool story. You go out there and there are old trees. My foresters laugh. Whenever they see that slide, they say, "No, Kevin, that's a dead tree." That's not a tree. That's a dead tree. There are mature trees. Everywhere you look, there are piles of trees like this. Young trees, future trees, natural settings, preserved, open to the public. It's really cool. And one of the sayings I like, you know, green is in, right? Well, so one of the things I say is, well, our forests were always green, meaning this was always sustainable. So. But some cool things about the tree part, white pine. First, it takes 80 years to grow one. Think about that business with a straight face. We started in 1848 and we just completed our 2nd crop cycle. Had a little party and went to work on the 3rd one. The fact that it takes so long to grow a white pine tree is a blessing in disguise. You have very tight growth rings, so the product is very stable. Trees that grow faster are less stable, so when that wood dries or over time, it'll cup, it'll crack, it'll twist. So your blessings are always your curses. The slow growth is a challenge, and the slow growth is a blessing.